How sweep it is. The Calgary Flames kicked off their preseason prospect camp with a sweep in the Next Gen Showcase.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jessica Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today, we are going to be talking about the outstanding performance we saw from the Flames this weekend, along with the players that may give Ryan Huska and Craig Conroy a run for their money when it comes to final roster cuts, along with some chit-chat about the double-edged sword of having a veteran-heavy group when you're trying to mix in the young kids, as well as more updates from Calgary. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And boy, does it feel good to wake up on a Monday morning and remember that the Flames won. And it wasn't a game 6 months ago. It was a game less than 24 hours ago. I quite enjoyed seeing hockey back on my screen. I felt like all was kind of right in the world for an hour or two. But good news is the Flames won both games against the Oilers, and they outscored the Oilers 11-9. I think one of the biggest things that I noticed was the players looking comfortable. Obviously, this isn't a high-stakes game, or, neither of these games were high-stake games. It was about getting your feet wet and dipping back into the swimming pool, but at the same time, there were some big hits being thrown and some great scoring as well as great goaltending. It was a lot of fun. And even though it's a very small sample size, it is still so refreshing to see this group, these young guys who haven't really played together that much, come together for these two games and put up 11 goals. I think that's pretty impressive. But one of the biggest concerns I had was Andrew Basha. He missed the skate practice on Saturday and then was held out of the second game for precautionary reasons. This kind of sent up little alarms because he dealt with a lengthy lower body injury last season, and he needed ankle surgery very early this year, and he admitted that he shouldn't have been playing through the injury, but he knew that he had to in order to, get things done. But I get a little nervous because we know how severe injuries, it's reactionary, I know, but I think of Sean Monahan and how his injuries just kind of were back to back to back to back early on in his career. And it's not something I want to see happen again. And it's something I'd like to see prevented at all costs. So if you have to hold him out, that's fine. I get it. But after one game, don't really know how to feel about that. But on the brighter side, Sam Honzik looked great alongside Carter King and Aydar Suniev. Suniev had 1 goal and 4 points. Matvei Gridin had 2 goals and 4 points. And those two players are going to make everyone's life difficult when it comes to these final decisions, because I think that both of them have the potential to be on the NHL roster this year, but it, again, is it's the limited spots. And that's where the Flames are kind of stuck once again. They're caught between a rock and a hard place because there are so many good players that could take that step in their development, but there's just no room. I thought that Carter King looked really good. I thought that he controlled the tempo, controlled the speed of the game, and didn't allow things to kind of get out of control. And obviously, I think what's super cool there is that he's a local kid and playing for his hometown team. So, like, there's that aspect to it. There was a lot of physicality as well within the first period of the first game on Friday. Axel Herdig was chucking haymakers at an Oiler because he didn't like a hit that he had on one of the Flames players, but it was a good fight. And then Meso Phillips looked solid too. He is a big dude, and Wranglers head coach Brent Sutter was talking about how like he kind of like held his breath sometimes when he would throw a hit because he wasn't sure. So hopefully we can work on reining in some of that aspect of it. But I mean, hey, pretty solid. You made a good impression. If you're not drawing attention, you're not doing good enough. If you're not drawing the coach's eye in a positive way, you're not doing enough. That's the one thing I learned from theater classes. And I really thought that Hunter Brustewicz and I thought that he looked great. I thought that the top line defensive pairing looked really solid. I like what we're seeing. It is very early on, and I want to believe that we're going to see more of these guys this season. I don't think that it's realistic to shut off the idea of the Flames integrating more youth. I think there's work to be done on all sides of this, but if you work hard enough, something's going to come up. And coming up next, we're going to talk about that double-edged sword that I just mentioned about there being limited spots, but so many players that deserve that shot. Coming up next on Locked On Flames. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. We've all been in that spot where you need to get the right hire and it's the pressure's on there, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up the hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your team every day. It feels so good to say that because not only does that mean the off season's over, but it's getting cooler out. Hockey's back, and so many great things are right around the corner for this team, and I couldn't be more excited. I know that 2 games is a very small sample size, especially for the prospect showcase, but it really is just a matter of time before we see these players really start to integrate themselves with the NHL roster. And I think obviously things will look a little different when that happens, but you're still going to have Jonathan Huberdeau. You're probably still going to have Kadri, Uyghur, obviously Dustin Wolf, Coronado. Like, it's just, there are going to be spots that open up, and I am so excited for these guys. But with that comes the reality of only having super limited roster spots available. Conroy said at the beginning of summer, oh, it's their job to come in and take a spot and steal a job. It is, yes, but realistically, it's not that easy when you are fighting for a job with maybe 2 open spots and there's like 4 of you that really want it, and all 4 of you actually deserve a shot at the NHL, but you're bogged down by so many veterans, essentially, and that's not their fault. That is not anyone's fault. I think really, my brain immediately goes to the Sharks, because when they were, moving their things along, it was about moving the forwards out. The veteran, and it didn't matter. You could be any player, actually. It didn't matter what position. But in order to allow these younger kids to come in and really kick up their rebuild a notch, turn it up a notch, they had to let the kids play. And just because you're not going to make the playoffs, if that's a risk if you put the kids in there, I don't really think that that's worth, like, that's a valid reason to hold them out. I think realistically, you need to be doing whatever you can to allow your players to develop. And I feel like a lot of these kids, I say kids, they're like 18, 19 years old, should be, I don't want to say like thrown to the wolves because that feels a little dramatic, but you just have to fully integrate them. I think that Zane Parekh is a perfect example of that. You'll likely see him play sheltered minutes to at least start things, but I do think eventually, once he's acclimated and comfortable, you'll see his responsibilities shift, especially if a Rasmus Anderson trade happens. The same thing with Sam Honzek, maybe. I think that the leash is a little bit longer, I would say, for Honzek this year. I thought that he looked a little better than what we saw last year. He looked a lot more confident, just throughout the game, skating, or when the puck was on his stick, or when he had to, complete a play. But I thought that there was a goal in yesterday's game, in Sunday's game, where he had a nice assist, or secondary assist, but it was a good play, good defensive play that allowed the play to form, to break up, create a path, is what I'm trying to say. But you aren't going to get NHL players if you don't give your players a fair shot. And I think immediately, like, my brain goes to Matthew Phillips. And Matthew Phillips was like the prospect, you guys. If you're new here, Matthew Phillips was one of the, like, he was the highly coveted Wrangler / Stockton Heat. That's how far we're going back. But it didn't work out. He never got to play as a Flame in the NHL. And he went over to Washington in free agency. He followed Mitch Love, who we'll talk about a little bit later, and then ended up going to Pittsburgh on waivers. And then I believe there was another team in there, and then I think it was back to Pittsburgh on waivers again. Just did not work out. And I feel like if you are in the business of developing players, you also have to remember you don't want them too overdone. Like, this is a dumb analogy, but think of it like a steak. You want it perfect. Not too early, certainly not too late. And you have to let those players, you have to make the hard decisions and let them play. However, I think there comes a point in time where you miss that window. You miss the opportunity, and either they aren't going to play for your NHL team, or they go somewhere else and it turns out that they're just not NHL caliber. And that's okay. That happens. It's not the end of the world, but you are never going to know what a player is capable of if you don't give them a shot. Last season, Rory Currens had 4 points in 5 games. Then they sent him back down. He may be just a fringe AHL, NHL player, but he deserves a fair shot. And I think what's going to be tough is just the limited spots you have, because you don't need a fourth line center if you're putting Hanzik or Zary there. You know, Backlund is going to start at third line center. I mean, technically, I guess you could do fourth line would be Kirkland or Currens. Third line would be Backlund. Second line, you know, you're kind of teetering between Morgan Frost and Connor Zary, and I'm adamant that they need to try Connor Zary there for a longer period of time. And then, of course, you have Kadri as your 1C. There aren't enough spots to give players a true run for their money. To let them have, I'm not saying let them go play 15, 20 minutes a night, not by any means, but some of these guys you just need to throw out there in a bottom 6 role and say, have fun. Go show me what you're capable of and tell me why you should be up here when this player comes back from injury or whatever the case may be. I'm interested to see how things will look closer to the deadline, because I don't know if the Flames hold on to Blake Coleman. I don't think they do it, but I also have a very difficult time thinking that they'll trade him. Personally, I do think that they're going to need to move Backlund down to the fourth line, but it just gets to the point where you're so bogged down by these log jams that players like Aydar Suniev or Matvei Gridin, they don't, or Carter King even, they don't get a fair shot at an NHL roster spot because, that spot's obviously going to be for the captain. Okay, and there's really only one open spot for a center, so that's probably not even going to be me. Obviously, you need to go out there and prove yourself. You can always be a dark horse and come out on top, but it is very limited. And I think that is truly one of the biggest disadvantages that the Flames have heading into this camp. I want to see more youth. They talk about coming in and stealing a job. How realistic is that? And coming up next, we are going to talk about the latest update on Mitch Love's predating his tenure with the Washington Capitals leave of absence worthy incident, as well as some great feel-good story about Carter King. Coming up next here on Locked On Flames. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using the FanDuel app because it is so easy to use, and it's a great way to make my Sunday far more exciting. I love betting the over because I am a sucker for offense, even if I don't have an emotional attachment to either team. Let's make it fun. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, and you're following me on Twitter at JustBelmosto. So yesterday, Sunday afternoon, the Washington Capitals PR Twitter account tweeted out they are going to be putting Mitch Love on a team-based leave. And all right, let me read it word for word. So it's from Capitals PR. Washington Capitals assistant coach Mitch Love has been placed on team-imposed leave pending results of an investigation by the National Hockey League, we will refrain from further comment until the NHL's investigation is complete. I immediately don't like this. I think to me, it takes me back immediately oh, Bill Peters. And that's an unfortunate reaction to have. But from what I've gathered, as well as what Elliot Friedman has said on 32 Thoughts on Monday's episode, is that letters were so he was a top candidate for 3 head coaching jobs, including Boston. And someone sent a letter to these teams. We don't know the contents of this letter, but apparently there was an incident that predates his time with the Washington Capitals that warrants an investigation. And speculating doesn't do any good. However, there is an interview that Colton Dock did on, I forget which podcast it was, but he goes on the record talking about how much he loves Mitch Love and how there was a time that he basically berated a kid on his WHL team so bad that he quit. And immediately it's okay, red flags. Number one, this story has been out for a while, but also, what if that's not it? Because I would certainly hope that that's not the case. That is nothing more extreme or severe. But at the same time, I hope that's all it is. It's just kind of like a one-off incident. But in this era of hockey, we have moved past the need for Mike Babcocks of the world. So we'll see. I think it's irresponsible to speculate on illegal activity. I've seen a few of those tweets and I'm like, these are baseless claims, but okay. But that one, I guess, does have a little bit of merit due to a player going on, I believe it was Spit and Chicklets, and sharing that story. But it makes sense why the Flames didn't hire him as a head coach now. If this incident I don't think it happened with the Wranglers. I think the Flames would have kicked him to the curb if that were the case. Maybe not. I don't know. But he was so highly regarded in the Flames organization that I don't know. I think that it's unfair to speculate, but based on all the context clues and evidence, if you will, we have, I think it's going back to his WHL days. So maybe the Flames didn't hire him because they knew that there were some questionable decisions made in the past, or they truly thought Ryan Huska was a better candidate. Either way, best of luck to everyone involved. This is a wild experience. Just because you feel kind of vindicated and you have answers as to why the Flames didn't pursue him further as the head coach. And then also coming out of 32 Thoughts is an update on some players from the 2018 team that may play again in the NHL. It's looking like Dylan Dubé and Michael McLeod and Carter Hart are all players that are piquing some interest. And the Leafs have already been connected to Dylan Dubé, which to me is kind of crazy because that's Brad Treliving, number one. Number two, I thought the thing was that they were going to go to American teams. I mean, not that it matters at the end of the day, but not really sure. To me, this feels like a very Brad Treliving move. It's like when Johnny walked in free agency and then the corresponding move was signing Kevin Rooney. It's like, okay, yeah, we lost Mitch Marner. Let me go sign Dylan Dubé. Like, it's very confusing. Hockey is so strange. And I'm glad I'm not in any sort of position to make decisions. But I wanted to talk about Carter King for a second because I think that he is just a great player that should be on your radar this season. And if you have a chance to check him out with the Wranglers, go do it. He is born and raised in Calgary. He went to the University of Denver, was the captain there. He just seems like an overall good kid. He is fighting for this spot. He wants to prove he's 24 and he is one of the older Flames prospects, but he had 2 points in 2 games with the Wranglers last season. His position, style, and play and career path draws similarities to Sam Morton, who made an impression at the Young Stars tourney a year ago, worked his way into a top 6 role in the AHL level, and then made his NHL debut at the end of the season. King, who majored in molecular biology, is more interested in forging his own path with an eye on pulling on that red flame sweater in front of a packed house. As much as you want to emulate something like that, you have to do your own journey. I mean, that was something I was very careful with, of not trying to compare myself to anyone else's situation. So for me, it's just believing in the staff here and the opportunity that I have to prove myself and earn a spot that I want to earn. I am very happy for him. I'm happy for any of these players that are coming in and looking to get starting the season on the NHL roster. I think about last season. Matt Coronado started the season with the Flames, was scratched for the first 3 games, played in the game against Edmonton, and then was sent down. And then Kirkland got hurt, I believe. And there was some shifting in the roster a little bit. And then, Matt Coronado gets called up. Anthony Mantha goes down in a game. So 2 ACL tears in like a matter of a few weeks. And Coronado takes his job. It's unfortunate that it happened how it did, but Coronado had a breakout season. So anything is possible at any given moment. I'm rooting so hard for these kids. I think Suniev, Gridin, and Carter are 3 players you should watch, as well as Sam Honzik. And we're going to talk more about the defensive prospects probably tomorrow, because I think that there's something brewing there. And I really like Hunter Brusewich, and he does draw comparisons to another American-born defenseman. Thank you all for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you are following me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day, and enjoy the rest of your Monday.